In other words, I would like to say that Mr. Lore has an exceptional understanding with regards to the Euphorious story. If you guys want to see who exactly is Mimi, Cyrene, Cyrene Giantess, the code, kindly check out this little thread right here. Oh wait, chat. Before we do y'all know? Like, are y'all the tourists? Are y'all the do y'all actually know the story of like how Mimi came to be? Alright, explain to me right now. Explain. Okay, bro. An exceptional answer from Genshin guy. Alright, explain to me right now. Please. Please explain. Oh, thank you, Mr. Bogey. I always got confused by Mimi and the ego code. You know what? You're absolutely welcome. To just give you guys a little bit of a summary, right? Straight from Mr. Lore himself. Assuming that y'all watched Attack on Titan. Because I think if y'all watched Attack on Titan, it will be a lot easier to understand how Mimi is Cyrene and Demiurge and Philia 093. So I'm just gonna assume that y'all watch Attack on Titan. Alright. So the very, very last few episodes of AOT, the entire arc where Eren went back in time with Zeke, alright, then they walk past like their story, right, how the Eldians and the Marlians, right, they had the war, right, Gracia, right, then eventually it reached a tipping point where like Gracia was about to kill the family, right, he was about to kill the family for the power of the Founding Titan, but he couldn't do it, right, Gracia couldn't do it, because he can't kill like an innocent family of like kids or whatever, right. At that moment, Eren Yeager, who is supposed to be just an observer, right? He's just supposed to go back in time to like witness the events of the past. As an observer, somehow he broke through the planes of reality into that exact moment of history where he told his own dad before he was even born, kill. Now you know there's that famous meme, right? That like Eren Yeager was like fucking like eyes open, everything, and then Gracia was like fucking terrified, and then he was like, "Nandu this guy, like why are you waiting, right? Why are you waiting?" So like this is a little bit of how Cyrene came back to feed information to the seed, because they are technically the same person in this sense. So instead of Cyrene going and saying, okay, you know what, you must kill everyone, it is more so giving them the memories, right? Feeding information over time, where eventually that little seed became a Mimi, and the Mimi became a big Mimi. So this little thing, this character, this big Cyrene, she technically never existed, because she died here. Alright. This is a character in the Euphoria story that died on the very, very first ever cycle. Because in order for Final to go back in time, Final had to kill her bottom up, grab that the little crescent moon thing. So every single time this happened, she never had a life in front of this child mode. So this is what the code thinks she would look like if she actually did grow up. Right, so this person technically never existed. Then, because of the millions of cycles of like feeding data, right? She's essentially feeding data into the little seed, right? The little seed. The seed became essentially an extrapolation of what could have been. That is how this thing took into reality. It is basically like a model of like what it could have happened in the future, but it doesn't happen. But because Mimi here, or rather Cyrene, baby Cyrene, kept feeding more and more and more and more and more, which is why, remember, there was this part in the story in 3.7. There was this room. There was like millions of like dead Cyrenes. Dead. Right? Like every single one of those times is when she basically had to go and reset. And then she was basically feeding all those informations to this thingamabob. Alright. Then that is how she took this form. And at this particular point of time, it is also where eventually she has to make the connection back in time in order to seal this. Because if y'all remember the ending of Amphorius, right? The Iron Tomb's ending, because fully is a concept that technically doesn't exist in our plane of universe, you have to make a choice of either being the fully of the entire universe, which is basically one of the 4 endings we saw in the Myriad Celestial, where everybody's gonna die except for Mimi. And I'm guessing the only remembrance ending, but that is fully. So that's option number 1. Then option number 2 is when she goes back and becomes the fully of this Amphorius in order to make this book, right? This entire anime, right? This anime, this story, this book, she has to finish the book. Because if the book is not finished, the ending could be different, which is how Iron Tomb could come back. So Mimi decided she is going to be the author writing the final sentence of the book. And then she transcends from the plane of Amphorius, which is in the book, right? This is the book. She transcends from the plane of Amphorius back out as the author of As I've Written, which is how fully of this Amphorius is witnessing the events that's happening in this book. Right, so this book right here, this causality is fixed. Because she was the same author that left the book in order to make sure nothing else ever changes and Iron Tomb is forever gone, right? So with that, I've come to the end of Mr. Lore's lore analysis of who is Cyrene. TLDR, read the book, and I'll see you guys on the Clips channel. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So why do I put a spoiler of your latest YouTube video? It was massive spoilers, by the way. It was okay. I actually don't really think it's that big of a spoiler because, to be completely fair, we already saw Himeko's boss fight from the actual developers themselves called Dawe. Like, they already showed this. Right, they already showed this. They already showed this in game. Alright, so like there was nothing for me to spoil because they already showed everything, right? So if y'all want to watch it, there was also a little bit of like a lore analysis. I won't really spoil y'all here, but if y'all want to find out more about Murata, right, how the Graphia came about, right, who are the Imaginary, feel free to hop on. But yes, I'm having a very Mr. Lore moment in my career right now where I'm just like very, very interested in reading. Right, oh my god, I want to read more and understand more about the lore of Honkai God Realm. So that is pretty much it. Essentially, we marry a code that takes sentience. Actually, we never married her because she doesn't exist in our plane of reality. Because Cyrene as a individual, if she were to exist in our reality will come to an end. That is why it's so sad that she had to, like, quote-unquote, kill herself to leave, or rather, remove herself from our current Astro Express journey. Because, do you guys remember the Myriad Celestia trailer? Celestia. This trailer honestly talks a lot about Cyrene's outcome, which I would say is a huge notification of what is to be, right? Okay, so this particular ending, right? This is what would happen if we actually quote-unquote married Cyrene and she joins us on the Astro Express, because finality will eventually reach this point where the remembrance will be the one that stands. And then there will only be 2 motherfuckers left in the entire universe, which is basically Cyrene and the Trailblazer. Everyone else, birthday explodes. So, in order to make sure this doesn't happen, she basically just removed it, essentially, right? Also, bro, there's also this other ending, which is also really cool. I was watching this video quite a bit as well, because it has like a lot of very interesting lore. So, for example, right, there was this ending featuring Jingliu, Bro, it's really, really cool, by the way. So this Jing Liu's ending is essentially she becomes the Lord Ravager, and she takes on a corrupted Jing Yuan Lightning Lord, becoming the Emanator of Han, and then she goes ahead and fight Yao Shi, which is abundant. So, that could have been like an insane spoiler that could have happened. But yeah, she basically took a corrupted Lightning Lord to go ahead and then go for a massive 1v1. But unfortunately, if they were to go for this ending, right, everything else in the world or in the universe will cease to exist, which is kind of like a common theme where every single one of these endings, basically everything dies. So no one survives except for that last few, like, tiny pockets of like whichever path you're gonna be following. So super interesting, super cool, which also means that maybe Jing Liu gets a Nova Flare, where she basically becomes a Remembrance Destruction DPS. Yeah, that will be really cool. So she summons the Lightning Lord, and then Jing Yuan will become homeless, and then we're never gonna see him ever again. Thank you. Thank you, MrPokke. I feel I'm getting more of this. Why M4S got you so worked up? Because M4 is the greatest piece of story that I've ever read when it comes to a gacha game. Or yeah, when it comes to a gacha game. Pretty much the best story that I've experienced. I'm standing here waiting to be proven corrected, because I've heard that Limbus Company and Nikkei has pretty interesting story as well. But like so far, bro, and Forest is just like, oh my god, bro, it's just way too good, right?
You have cooled your last cool, my man.
Mimi. Philia 093. Mimi Aaron. Mimi Hell. Mimi me now.